What's up, guys? Welcome along to All for United, and we are here today with a very impromptu show. Actually, I've been meaning to do this kind of show in ages. I just want to go live for like half an hour at lunchtime with some great guests to talk about the paper rubbish that always spouts around social media, always a good discussion, but then also to talk about the United talking points that other people potentially aren't chatting about right now. So for today, we're going to jump on, we're going to chat about some of the paper talk. Danny Ings looks like he's going to leave Southampton. He's not going to sign a new contract. So United fans and the papers are asking the question, well, Premier League proven striker there. He fits in with the Ollie mould. Could there be a chance that United might go in for him? So we'll chat to Mark and Roy about him. I want to chat a little bit about the Fulham game tonight. And also, Roy, we can't not have you on and not talk about Sir Matt Busby. 27 years, isn't it, since his passing today? So we want to jump in and talk a little bit about Sir Matt as well, a little bit later on in the show. So we'll go live for about half an hour. If you've got any questions, get them in. If you want to join the conversation, get them in. We're over on YouTube, youtube.com/all4united. Hit a like on this video. Let's get over 20 likes, shall we? Let's put the banner up here. Let's do it. 20 likes at lunchtime. Easily done. youtube.com/all4united. But let's start, Mark, with looking ahead to the Fulham game a little bit tonight. The 0-0 against Liverpool, I think, was a good enough point. I think we can look back at it as a good point. But we need to score goals tonight, don't we? And the big question is going to be, have we got enough to break down this Fulham team? What do you make of that question? What are your thoughts?
I do believe we've got enough to break down the team. I think time and time again, especially over the last few months, we've shown that whilst we might be struggling against the big six, as it were, we are breaking down the lesser teams and getting majority of our points. And as Alex Ferguson would always say, he would try to attain as many points as possible against the lesser clubs and then work on the counter-attack. You know, I spoke about this the other night that, whenever he set up against Arsenal, he would very much sit back and get him on the counter. And I think that this is a big thing for Ollie at the moment. It would be nice to get more points. But Fulham have got a good record at the minute. I mean, they narrowly lost against Chelsea the other night. Very unfortunate, and we all know what's happening at Chelsea at the moment. And then they've had some decent results prior to that. So we've got the squad to do it. I've said this, you and I have spoken about this, Ben, many times. The squad depth at the moment is far better, and if we can't go into games like this set up to win, and it would be nice to get, a good amount of goals in a game. You know, we haven't really seen too many 3-4-0s, and I'm not saying that that's going to be an easy job tonight, but really, if we want to make an account for ourselves, that's exactly what we should going in to do, and the mentality to have.
Yeah, good points, well made. I do think it'd be a tricky game tonight. We mentioned there. Oh, here we go. We're back. We mentioned there about their good record, Mark. You was right to bring that up, because even if we go back to, I don't know, even back to the game where they lost against Arsenal, that 3-0, coming out the back of that, they narrowly lost against Leeds United. They then got an absolute beating by Aston Villa, to be fair, and then Brentford in the Cup. But then they've only lost 1-0 to Wolves, 1-0 with Sheffield United, 2-1 to Crystal Palace. They won 2-0 against West Brom, lost 1-0 to West Ham. They're all really tight games. Lost 3-2 to Everton, 1-2-1 against Leicester. They drew 1-1 with, of course, Liverpool recently, 1-1 with Newcastle, 0-0 with Brighton and Southampton, 1-1 with Spurs, lost 1-0 against Chelsea. I mean, Craven Cottage, Roy, it's not notably an easy place to go. I mean, last time we went there, Martial, by the way, scored that amazing solo goal. Do you remember? Cracking goal where he picked up the ball and then slotted it past the keeper. But it's not an easy place to go. So you're expecting a really tough game tonight, Roy?
I am, yeah. I mean, they've got Mitrovic back and Ruben Cheeks back, but they've got two who are missing because of suspension. I think it'd be very important, Mark said, what side we put out. I say to quite a few people, this is an amazing squad United's got, really. I mean, it's 20 players. You saw the bench on Sunday against Liverpool and looked at the players Liverpool had on their bench and the players United had on theirs. There was 7 or 8 full internationals. So I think he'll be. I think he'll go with De Gea in goal. I think Wan-Bissaka will play. I think Maguire plays virtually every game. Be Lindelof or Bailly. I won't be surprised Bailly gets a game. I won't be surprised Tellers gets a game instead of Shaw. But in midfield, I think I'd certainly go with Pogba, Fernandes, and and just one other, and Matic possibly. I think I'd start Cavanagh at centre forward, and perhaps Greenwood and Rashford. That would be my starting side. But we are in the shake-up. Whatever people think now, there's 18 games gone, and after tonight, we will have played every single side once. I've got an amazing away record. We need to improve dramatically at home, mind you. But I think we've got to go there with confidence, and they've had some good results. Fulham, they're fighting for their lives, so it's not going to be a doddle. But I suspect that we should win, and I like Mark just said as well. I hope that there's 2 or 3 goals in our locker as well.
Let's talk about that squad depth quickly that you hit on, because I do agree. When I was looking at the players that Liverpool were bringing on and our attacking Arsenal, so to speak, who we had on the bench, I was looking at it, I was going, you can't disregard this United team on squad depth. We have a phenomenal squad. I think between us and City, the 2 best squads in the league, I think. I don't think Liverpool have the best squad in the league. I think what Liverpool goes to show is how if you've got a manager who can just get the right players to click, then you can find a winning formula. But that United squad at the moment, Roy, it's poised perfectly, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this is off the top of my head, but on Sunday, the subs who could all slot in and start the game tonight: Henderson in goal, Tellers at left back, Bailly at centre back, Van der Berg, who I've not mentioned again, in midfield, Mata in midfield, Matic in midfield, Greenwood up front, Tunazabi at the back, and I must have missed some. James wasn't even in the squad of 20, and Lingard, I appreciate there'll be lots of views on Lingard, but there's a guy who played in the last World Cup. He was nowhere near the squad of 20. So I think we've got a really top class squad. I really do. It's just mixing and matching correctly. And I know you mentioned and may mention about Ings, but the question is, if you moved any of that squad out, you've got to bring someone in who's of comparable ilk. But I think we have got the on paper. The thing is with the City squad, I was just be argumentative here. I think if you're writing the names down and going 1 for 1 for 20 players, we will match anybody. It's just that 1 or 2 teams, Liverpool and City, have got a better formula and a more regular system of playing, etc., which helps their changes, if you follow me.
Yeah, no, Mark, sorry, what's your thoughts on that? Because do you think on paper, or potentially if you match us up 1 by 1, we have potentially one of the best squads in the league?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a complete contrast to how we felt before the summer. And obviously we did go through a bit of a disappointing summer, but actually when you look at it on paper, I do believe that we have a squad, and I think that shows. I think that's shown and shone throughout the last couple of months, and that's why we are where we are. And there obviously are some pivotal players that seem to be able to get us out of jail, but fundamentally we do have that rotation, and that means necessary. I was talking about this the other night, and I was very much of the view that maybe we should have a bit more rotation, but actually I think tonight we probably should start with our stronger team, or at least have the players available in order to see the game out. Unfortunately we've got Liverpool in the FA Cup. Now the way that I feel that we should approach that is, unfortunately we've drawn Liverpool, but I think that we should treat it probably as a 4th round, and that's when we perhaps rest our players a little bit. Listen, I'd love to be able to get a trophy, the FA Cup, whatever means necessary, but I think fundamentally we would kick ourselves more if we shoot ourselves in the foot in a league game as opposed to a cup game. So I think that tonight we should start the better players, or at least have them available, and again just kind of put into everybody else's mind, rivals, other teams, fans, that we are there and we mean business. And I think this also goes back to the fact that we've been very unfortunate over the last few years with injuries, and I don't really care what anyone else has to say, but this goes to show that Liverpool have been very fortunate. You're absolutely right. On the bench, our bench looked far stronger compared to Liverpool's, but they've been very lucky to be able to stick with a roundabout way the same 11 every week.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well made. I just want to get to a couple of comments quickly on this. Ashley says squad depth is getting out only a few players away from having quality options all over the pitch. Jamie says we're still 3 or 4 signings away from being that complete squad. And there's a few comments also still coming in, like Jamie's mentioned here. Not sure how to see Danny Ings being in that United squad. And Liberty says the only striker we should go for is Kane. You know how much I love Harry Kane. Look, I think it's quite interesting that these so just the story is that Danny Ings has said to Southampton that he wants to play for a Champions League side. So he wants to play for a side that's currently in the Champions League. He wants one more throw at the dice at the highest level. Of course, when rumours and stuff like this comes out, tabloids are straight onto it. Well, what about Manchester United? Let's put Ings and Manchester United together and people will talk about it. And that's exactly what I want to do. So I just want to get a bit of reaction to it. Some well-known football names who I won't throw under the bus are actually saying that he is the perfect striker to be under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's got all the traits. He's a clinical goal scorer. He can run behind the lines. He's got pace. His movement's fantastic. A bit like Cavanagh when it comes to how he does his running off the ball. So, Roy, I'll come over to you. You know, if we're in a position at the end of the season where potentially Cavani's year keeps getting hindered with injuries, maybe isn't able to put on the numbers that we potentially want to see, could £20 million ish bid in someone who's coming out of contract within a season, Danny Ings, could that be something that interests you in the squad?
Yeah, I mean, I would at 9 o'clock this morning, I wouldn't have jumped out of bed and thought Danny Ings, we must go and sign, I must admit. But Cavanagh is the interesting one. I mean, he is genuinely world class. Obviously, he's 33 now. You've got to be very careful about, as I said before, whoever you bring into that squad has got to be a replacement, really. We have got today 4 top-class strikers. I know some of them are misfiring, as they will do, etc., etc. But it's not worth bringing a 5th striker in. So if you're going to go for Danny Ings, that would mean to me that probably Cavanagh is going to go. So fair enough. That puts you back to four strikers. And with respect to Danny Ings, he probably wouldn't object as much as coming in against Fulham away tonight and against Sheffield United next week and be on the subs bench against Liverpool. But I don't see Danny Ings coming in if you're keeping Cavanagh. Now, that's unless, of course, you're then also going to look at the longer-term future of Martial. One assumes Rashford and one assumes Greenwood are going to be fixtures at United over the next few years. So as it stands at the minute, the answer to your question is Danny Ings would only be coming into United as a replacement for somebody like Cavanagh, not as an extra. We don't need 5. We've got other areas in the team where we need those players as opposed to centre forward. But if Cavanagh is going to go and he is going to be around 20k or something like that, oh, fair enough. I mean, he knows the league, etc. And unless there's a world-class player out there that we don't know about, that we can get hold of, and he's going to come in and adapt to our system, etc. Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily have it screaming out at you. That's somewhere we should be ringing up at this minute.
Yeah, I feel like it's a similar conversation, Mark, that we were having in the summer about the left-back options when we were talking about Alex Telles, and I was adamant if we bought in Alex Telles, we'd be bringing in a squad option. We wouldn't be bringing in a world-class left-back who gets an automatic place in this United starting 11. And I sort of agree with the point Roy made at the start there. If we aren't going to play, if Cavani's not going to stay, he genuinely is a world-class striker. We should be looking to replace him with a world-class striker that can come straight into that number 9 position and make it their own. Danny Ings potentially isn't that person, is he? What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I'm very much in the middle with Danny Ings. We all know what he can do. His stats say that for himself. You know, whilst he was at Liverpool, he only played 24 games. He scored 7, assisted 3. Last season, 38, scored 22, assisted 3 at 2. Sorry, and we know that is very much there. I think we're all also very much aware that United do want to bring in a centre forward. I know that obviously Cavani was that option, and we did get him in. He's world class, but ultimately he is 33, and we have him for 1, maybe 2 years. Now, I don't know whether they've made a decision on whether they're going to keep him or not. I feel that being in United's position, they absolutely should do, but they're going to be looking towards the future too. Now, saying that, Danny Ings is 28, so that's not even checking that box either, and we should probably be looking at someone younger. But essentially, I do agree with a lot of the people that have mentioned that he would fit the Ollie mould. I think he would. I think he's a very quick striker. He would give the same dynamic that Cavani does. And whilst I agree with Roy in the fact that perhaps it means that someone's leaving, I think the difference between Cavani and Danny Ings and Rashford and Martial is very, very apparent. I think that Ben and I have spoken about this many times. Martial and Rashford are inside forwards. They're not number 9s. Cavani is the only real number 9 that we've got, and Mason, but he seems to be played in different positions and is still learning and very young. So would Danny Ings be another option if Cavani's injured, if there's some suspension, if Cavani is maybe looking to leave at the end of the season, then perhaps he would be a good fit. And I think that being the person that he is, he wouldn't be extortionate. I think that we would be able to get him for a very small amount of money compared to other players that we could look at abroad or even in England. So I think that it could be a bit of an astute business by United. I don't think it would be a bad option at all.
I do agree with that as well. And the comment that came in here talking about Martial and Rashford, although Danny Ings would score more goals as a number 9 than Martial would. So it's an interesting rumour. And it is a good point well made. Like, Danny Ings is a goal scorer. First and foremost, that's what he does emphatically. He nearly won the Golden Boot last year. Like, he went on a fantastic run last year and he's still banging in goals. He scored that goal, didn't he, against Liverpool from the impossible angle a couple of weeks ago. Like, he knows how to score goals. And that's what United struggle with, I feel. We struggle with scoring goals. I read a stat the other day, Mark, and I don't know if you want to dwell on this a little bit more. United have made the most chances in the league this season.
Yeah, we've had the most shots on target as well, I think.
Yeah, which is miles away from where we were. Like, there's been so much improvement across the park, but we're just not putting the ball in the back of the net. And I think if any of us were to edge a bet on what we think that scoreline is going to be tonight, it'd be 2-1 or 1-0. And if you have a look at the amount of chances United have been making, we shouldn't be worrying about the fact of whether United can make chances tonight to win the game comfortably. So scoring goals is a struggle for United, which is also quite worrying because, as you say, we play with inside forwards and you'd be expecting Martial and Rashford to really up their goal contributions, but it's just for whatever reason. I mean, a big thing with Rashford's decision making, but that's another conversation for another day. Really, really hindering us when getting up the pitch. So it's a really interesting one. I just want to read a couple more comments on this. Ings is currently a better forward than Rashford, Martial and Greenwood. Sign him up. Jacob says Rashford and Martial don't look like they grew up as number 9s. They are dribblers, dynamic forwards who don't seem to thrive in occupying defenders and playing off the shoulder. Well, look, keep your comments coming on the Danny Ings because I do want to move on and do a solid 10 minutes on this next bit. And seeing as we've got Roy, it would be rude not to, and that's remembering Sir Matt Busby. Now, Mark, I don't know if you've watched any shows we've done with Roy in the past, but be ready to be absolutely mesmerised because Roy has some fantastic memories and some fantastic bits and pieces to share. But Roy, we've never spoken before properly one-on-one about the impact Sir Matt Busby had on Manchester United. So for any fans sat out there now, tell us a little bit about the legacy that Sir Matt Busby leaves our football club.
Well, without a shadow of a doubt, Sir Matt Busby made Manchester United. But the reason I say that, if one looks at the history from 1919 to 1945, the end of the First World War to the end of the Second World War, Manchester United went through their worst 2 or 3 decades entire history. And Matt Busby came to United in 1945. And when the fall restarted in 1946, he had one big stroke of luck, which a couple of the players at the time did mention to me. They felt that he was lucky in picking up a team such as Jack Crompton and the legendary great Jackie Carey, Johnny Carey, who was captain, John Aston, Henry Coburn, Allenby Chilton. He signed Jimmy Delaney. He had Johnny Morris, Jack Rowley, Stan Pearson, Charlie Mitten, 3 truly world-class forwards. So he had those players there, except for Delaney, but he moulded them into a really great side. And the first 5 years after the war, United won the Cup in 48, and they finished up runners-up 4 times. And as the team moved into the 50s and were getting that bit older, because don't forget, these lads who were 20, 21 at the start of the war in 1939 would have been 26, 27 at the end of the war. So another 6 or 7 years, they were into the 30s. In 1952, that side that won the Cup in 1948 actually won the league in 1952. And then that was the end of that era and that team. And of course, it was also a bit lucky then. We had all those young players that came through to be known as the Busby Babes. But Matt Busby's influence on Manchester United, how he moulded the way of the club, the future of the club, it can never, ever be underestimated. I had the real fortune of meeting him, well, a few times, but on 2 particularly long, memorable occasions. One was actually interviewing him in his office at Old Trafford after he'd retired. And imagine having been a young lad from about 7 or 8 going watching the Busby Babes from 55 through the Munich scenario. Imagine actually going into the office and talking face to face to Sir Matt Busby. It was quite surreal, really.
They say don't meet your heroes, Roy.
They do. Don't meet your heroes, they say. Well, in this case, I'll try and get some better light, by the way, for you. In this case, it was my charger I needed doing there, gents. I'm sorry about that. In this case, it was memorable. Hi, Roy, how are you doing? And very quiet. Come on, took me into his office. And of course, he'd moved out of the manager's office then. So there was no windows in this particular office, just the 4 walls. And his secretary made us a coffee and he just let me talk. And it is on YouTube, the interview for about 30 minutes. And, you know, it was just fantastic to talk to, very just like you. I mean, I'm a great grandfather now, but it was how I hope I come over to my grandchildren and great grandchildren. It was just lovely being around, and you felt totally relaxed, and you weren't twigging who you were sat with, if you get what I mean. Mm-hmm. It was like talking with respect to you 2 guys here today, two ordinary guys, great to talk to. But it's like as though one of you 2 was Sir Matt Busby, seriously. And then about 6 months after, I got asked to go on Willie Morgan's testimonial committee. And Sir Matt was on the testimonial committee. Now, Willie Morgan knew loads of very, very famous people. And I genuinely was in the old gag of I was the only person that I didn't know at the meeting, if you understand what I mean. I mean, he had, they weren't at the meeting, but he had people like Johnny Mathis and Howard Keel on his committee, and obviously Sir Matt Busby. And we met at a hotel in Altrincham, the Cresta Court. And of course, I walked into this room, and it's about 6 months after meeting Matt Busby. And it's absolutely true, this. And I was Billy No Mates. I mean, there were groups of 2s and 3s, and I was just stood over in the corner. And Matt came in with another guy I knew. And he had to walk past me, and he said, he said, "Hey, Roy, how you doing?" And like that was when I really was gobsmacked. Because
that's when me and Mark know that we're speaking to footballing royalty here.
Well,
absolutely.
He never forgot a name. He just never forgot a name.
Mark, I don't know if you've got any questions for Roy. Feel free to think of a couple if you want to ask about Sir Matt. But Roy, I want to ask you a quick question, because for fans out there who don't know much about the footballing style of Sir Matt Busby, but often hear about United playing the Busby way, how would you describe that for a fan? What is the Busby way?
the Busby way was always on the front foot, never thinking of sitting back and counter-attack, always on the front foot. I never can remember seeing a United side under Matt Busby sitting back and attacking and on a breakaway. He always went forward with the notion, and again, a lot of this sounds a bit glib, but it's true. Well, I'd rather win 4-3 than 1-0. And, it was a different era, of course, the 50s, a lot of high-scoring games, a lot of attacking players. But then again, of course, in the 60s, he then had the Holy Trinity together. He'd had Bobby there for a while, and the signing of Dennis Law again signifies the type of football he wanted to play, a genuine world-class footballer. I think I mentioned this before to you, Ben. In my opinion, him and Cavanagh, the two most relevant signings. Bruno's moving towards that, by the way, of the time, because they not only came in and did their own stuff brilliantly, they immediately lifted the other teammates and lifted the crowd. And Bruno's, evidently done that, in my opinion, over the last 12 months. That's the highest praise I can give him, by the way. Law, of course, was a footballer on the front foot, and Geordie Best, you couldn't have had more of a footballer on the front foot. So, no, if you really wanted to know his style of play, it was let's win 4-3 and we're going to attack. So tonight we'd be going to Fulham and we would be thinking of, like Matt said there, which of the three you want to put? Greenwood, Cavanagh, Rashford, or Rashford, Cavanagh, Martial, or Rashford, Martial, Greenwood, whichever. But he would be going with those three forwards, and he would be having Bruno behind, and he won't be looking to sit back. And he'd be thinking, if Fulham's going to score, we're going to score too, and we're going to score more goals than the opposition. And he played attractive football. One of these other massive traits which I learned from him, and I've been asked tomorrow, will I go and do a talk to some people about leadership, management, and people who's inspired you. And I'm going to put three people forward, and one of them will be Sir Matt Busby, because he, and I was told this by others so many times, he always made sure that he knew if there was any illnesses in the family. The players' families was paramount for him. He needed to know the children were all right, was there any relationship problems, if people were in hospital or people were ill or it was birthdays, there was cards, there was present. He just never forgot. Obviously, he'd have great staff around him to make sure those dates were registered, etc., etc. But no, a top man manager.
It very much sounds like Sir Alex took a lot of influence from him in his managerial style. Because when I watched the Sir Alex Ferguson era, I obviously didn't get to see any of the Sir Matt Busby era. For me, they sound like two peas in a pod somehow, because the same as always gets said about Sir Alex. Mark, sorry, do you have a? I keep saying, why do I keep calling you Matt? I've known you long enough.
My name's right on the screen as well. It's okay.
I don't know why.
He took the words out of my mouth. Actually, I think something that we've been, something that we've learned over the years is whilst Alex Ferguson, he was obviously a fantastic manager, but he also had an incredible personal approach to a lot of his players, and that was going to be my question to you. And you kind of outlined that there was Matt Busby. Obviously, Sir Alex must have taken a lot of his approach and his methods and that sort of thing. And my question for you was going to be, did he have a personal rapport with his players? Did he get the best out of those players because of the relationship he had with them? That was my question.
Massive. In fact, it's always dangerous that when you're making people to be gods and they genuinely live up to that reputation, you sometimes do look for areas where, well, come on, tell me one thing that wasn't 100%. And the only time in all my knowledge and writing about United, the only time, and any mere mortal would have cracked under this much, much more. But the thing was, the winning of the European Cup in 1968, 10 years after being in that plane, and 10 years after a lot of those young people that he'd nurtured and brought along had died alongside him, winning the European Cup in 1968, in my opinion, that was the end of the story, if you get what I mean. What else could he do? He'd already done it before Munich. Munich was a disaster that you wouldn't wish on anybody. And the tragedy in getting over it on his own personal, don't forget his own personal health, the injuries that he suffered, to come back and then bring Law into the team, win the cup in 63, win the league in 65, win the league in 67, win the European Cup in 68. Where else do you go? And I think then he was so close to a lot of players, like they got Vic and Paddy, and it wasn't most of the side. I think, Wilf didn't have a chance really as a manager following him, if you understand what I mean. I'm not saying he interfered, but I think that was the time where perhaps he should have gone and retired after winning the European Cup in 1968, because for his own health and life, he needed to make that break. But he was Manchester United through and through, and they made him the president and things such as that. And we're very, very lucky, and he definitely shaped the Manchester United everybody knows today.
I love that. Mark, Thank you for your question. Roy, thank you for jumping on as well. Do you know what? Whenever I have these conversations with Roy and I try and shoehorn them into a show, I always want to do a whole show on it. So I think from now on, United Day is just going to be a one-topic show, so we can really smash into some conversations and some topics with our guests. But we're going to try and come back next lunchtime, so please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, share your thoughts and your memories of Sir Matt Busby. If you have some, please, through our Twitter at All for United. Mark, thanks again. Roy, thanks again. Go check out these two guys on Twitter as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. And we'll be back tonight straight after the game for our match reaction show. Make sure you join Karthik then, and hopefully we'll all be celebrating a win. We're out of here, Reds. Speak to you soon.